Looky what I picked up this morning. New rear tires for the MD. I just got to get them off of here. These are 14.9 by 38 inch tires manufactured by Alliance with 45-degree bars. I like that because it looks closer to original. And don't even ask me how much they cost. I haven't told my firstborn child yet. Well, let's go ahead and put them on. Gotta jack up the tractor one side at a time. Oh, let's see here. How high do we need to go? Need to go higher than that. We got alignment clamps there to keep the rim from spinning, and they need to line up. There we go. These wheel clamps are designed so they can go on different ways depending on the situation. Since I've got a jam nut here, you don't put them on this way because they won't seat all the way. Instead, you reverse them around, and this face rides on the rim and clamps the rim in place and gives you space for the jam nut. There. When I've done some of these old Farmalls, like the H, there was no jam nut, so I had to align both the clamps at the same time. That's a little difficult. There's that lock that keeps the rim from spinning. I had actually lost one of these, so I wound up welding on new ones. Then we can tighten them up. Hey, reversed on me. Well. Everything's designed for right-handers in this world, including impact wrenches. The little buttons so that we wind up pressing it at the wrong time. I don't know. I'm holding it in my right hand. Maybe that's not. Let her back down on one foot anyway. And then we can put the other one in place. Spin that around until it lines up with the notch. There we go. Still got to go up a little bit. Touch more. There we go. Put these clamps on. Now before I let the jack down, I want to take the stand off that the transmission was held up by. Whoops, not that way. I gotta take this cradle off the back to slide it out. She should come right out with a little bit of tilting. We can put that stand away for safekeeping, ready for the next tractor I do. And finally, I can let the jack down, let her stand on her own 2 feet. We can take these splitting stands off, remove the center link. Didn't even scratch the paint. For those who are curious and maybe weren't around for the earlier episodes, these are the splitting stands that my dad made. It's a trailer jack with a post, and this is where the trailer jack would normally weld onto the trailer. This stabilizes it because they have a tendency to wobble this way around a little bit because it's just this link. And then you've got this plate that clamps on the frame rails and a center link which holds the two of them together that connects into these pins here on either side. And the really great thing about these splitting stands is they're so adaptable. I can jack them up to whatever height I need, whatever width I need, depending on the tractor I'm working on. They're universal. I can drill other holes in these plates to fit different frame rail configurations. They're really going to come in handy. And I do have a pair of fenders for this tractor. They've been patiently waiting out here behind this old corn sheller. They need to be straightened up a little bit and cleaned up and painted, and I'll put them on the tractor, but it's not high on my priority list right now. That silver and black with the red center really makes it beautiful. As I said, these are 14.9 by 38 tires. Stock on M back in the day was 13.6 38, so these are a touch wider, and the reason for the odd dimensions on the widths is they change down the line. These are 11-inch rims, and I forget, the 13.6 I think is equivalent to an old 12-inch wide tire. Anyway, these are 14.9s. I like the look of the wider tire. That was what was on it before. And I did not have the tire shop put ballast in these tires, as you can tell when I took them off the truck. I'm going to run it for a while without ballast in them, see how it handles. I like the feel of ballasted tires on a tractor, that kind of lower center of gravity, and you can just feel how solid it is. Even though we do have a few side hills where the weight's nice, especially with a tricycle front end. We'll see how it feels, and I can always have it at it later. Heck, I can drive the tractor right over to the tire shop and have it put it in there. Let me show you what I've been up to in the meantime. I can't put the hood on all the way because I've got one of the holes closed up, which I'll show you, but I've spent, I don't know, a half a day yesterday straightening dents on this hood and trying to get it to fit right. That's a really important thing to me, those little details, having smooth sheet metal and having things fit right. I had a dent running through here which messed up this curve here, and I had to mess around with it to get it straight, and the same thing had happened back here. This curve was off, so I spent some time with a hammer and dolly kind of pounding that out. And then this patch here, this is where the gasoline tank is, right under here. Somehow the hole was way off. The hole was, well, way down here, and the center of the cap is right here. So what I did is I cut this area out, and then I took a piece of cereal box and stuck it on here and marked the center of the hole and taped it around here, took the hood off, made a patch that fit just as exactly as I could in the hole out of some equivalent thickness sheet metal. This is 18 gauge as I remember. And then welded it all the way around and ground it down. It needs another layer of weld around it to fill in these little voids. And then I can take a hole saw and cut out the hole in the right place, and it'll look factory. And I got sort of the same problem here. For some reason the exhaust hole is still in the right place even though the gasoline hole was off, but I've got to patch this up, which I'll probably wind up filling in this whole hole and then drilling it back out to get a nice clean edge. And then I've got this little hole here where this bolt comes up to hold the hood down. That's been eaten back too, and I'll patch that up so it looks good. And that's not even mentioning the cowl, which is mostly dent straightened and fits all right. I've got to weld a new screen back into it, weld the clips back on to go down through here, put some Bondo on where I've got some very slight ridges from the hammer and dolly work, and then I can paint this all at once. But now that I got the rear tires on comes the next step. Actually kind of the last thing I need to do before I pull the tractor out, so that I can clear out the shop to paint sheet metal. I gotta take this front cowl off. Oh, let's see here. It's been a while since this has been off. Since last spring. You know, that was some pretty darn poor planning. I gotta put the splitting stands back on for what I'm gonna do next. Well, luckily they're not hard to put on. Except I'm not gonna use them as splitting stands this time. I'm gonna use them as jacks. And what I'm gonna do is jack up the front end of the tractor using these. When I've had to jack up front ends of tractors before I do goofy things, put the hoist on it, hang it from a chain, this seemed a lot easier to me. Let's do a little test here. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. This tractor was harder to steer than it should be last year, and this is one of the advantages to doing a mechanical restoration first, driving it for a season, and then fixing all the things that come up that you didn't catch first time around. Usually that's quite a few leaks and all sorts of little things before you go ahead and paint it. What happened was you drive ahead straight, and when you started to turn the wheel, it would kind of hang up, and then as you got into the turn more, the wheel was easier to turn. So it could have been three things in my book. Thrust bearing number one, which is down there in the pedestal. Number two is a bad steering gear where you've got a wear in between the worm and the sector gear on the steering, and it kind of catches as the worm gear's turning against it. And number three, I worried that this big bushing down here in the bolster didn't have enough clearance and it was binding as I was turning around. But when I turn the steering shaft by hand here, see, it's hung up. I can't turn it. I should be able to turn that. And when I kick it off center, if I can get it off center, get off center. We'll do this. Yeah. There. Now that the tires are off center or off driving straight, I can turn the steering shaft. So that tells me the thrust bearing and the bushing aren't the problem, but rather it's a worn in spot on this sector gear. Fortunately, I can get a new one. Just pop the cover off this gear housing here and we can take a look. I checked it out when I rebuilt this steering box and it looked all right, but we'll be able to see if there's fresh wear on it. I used Right Stuff gasket maker on this, so we just gotta pop it loose. It's definitely the right stuff. Oh, it's that green grease in there. It must be John Deere cornhead grease. Not green in a red tractor. Boy. It is John Deere cornhead grease. I know because I put it in there. I like using flowable grease in these instead of oil. This is the sector gear right here. So we got to excavate it and then pull it out. Now let's get this grease out of the way here. I love flowable grease in these housings because it never runs out. Good for rake housings, steering housings. Let's see if these will do the trick. Yep. The shaft should start to fall through when I take the nut off. Because this is the only thing holding the wheels up. And it indeed is coming down. I might lower the tractor a little bit to keep that from falling through. Alright. Ugh. And a washer. This shouldn't be too bad to get out. Famous last words, right? It's got to work against the worm gear to get out. Whoa, sorry about that. You guys are perched atop the tractor kind of precariously here on the valve cover. All right, we'll try that. You're sitting on the radiator now, by the way. And it's not hot, so don't worry. Just got to get this the rest of the way out. It's like I need a better lever here. Turn that worm gear. I had to jack it back up a little bit so I could get the worm gear to rotate easily. I got my hips on the tires. Kind of jiggle it loose. There we go. Yeah. Clean this sector gear up in the parts washer and see what we got. And there's one other test with the steering disconnected now. I can feel how that bushing is. And these rotate really easily. That is super easy. Let me put all the weight on it. Yeah, there's no binding in them now. So here's what we've got on this sector gear. See that real bright dishing in there? That's where the worm gear is binding in it. It's got a sharp edge on it. Usually when you see wear on these, you get kind of a smooth sort of moon on them, and I can see where it's hanging up on this. When I had this apart last winter, I checked the sector gear and I thought that the wear was acceptable. Now thinking about it though, this bearing was shot in here, and it was shot that the balls had come out of it, and so this worm was not acting on the sector in the way that it should. and that probably created kind of a weird wear pattern that makes the steering hang up. So a new sector gear, fortunately they're readily available. In fact, I can get one that's a full circle if I want, and that way if it ever wears out, which I doubt it ever will, I can just turn it to an unworn section. The sector gear on the H was that way. It wasn't really a sector gear, it was a round gear, so when I restored the H, I just turned it to an unworn spot, which was nice, but not this one. Oh, but what about the worm gear, you may ask? Does that need replacement too? Well, here's what happens. The worm gear is rotating like this, and so it's wearing all along its face as the other sector gear moves against it, so you get more even wear on this, whereas the sector gear is always riding against that one small spot on the worm gear, so you get concentrated wear on them. So it's very rare that you have to replace the worm gear on these. So I'm going to go in and order that right now so I can get it as soon as possible. Alright, having ordered the new steering gear, I can go ahead and put on the steering wheel and the steering shaft. The reason I waited to put it on till now is because I wasn't sure if I was going to have to pull the front end of it out to solve my steering issue, but it appears that I won't, so I'll go ahead and put it on. I got to loosen up this center column here to tilt it back so I can slide the rod in, because it only goes in one way. You'll see. See, this rod's got a U-joint at one end, so you can't slide it in from the back. It has to go in from the front. And I loosened the post up enough so that it'll tilt back and I can slide it in like so. Then we can take care of hooking it up. Just got to work this shaft onto here. There we go. Now that I got the shaft all hooked up, I can put in the Woodruff key for the steering wheel and put the steering wheel on. It's a tight fit, as it should be. I'm going to have to clean some of this paint off of here, or I'm never going to get the steering wheel on. Paint always comes off where you don't want it to come off, but when you want it to come off, it won't come off. That's the way it goes. Alright, hopefully that's enough paint off to get it on. Yep. Now for the nut. Tighten her up. Greased up the Zerk here a little bit. Certainly isn't binding on the shaft. That's good. So if we just look like they're back, the tractor's pretty much complete. I mean, it doesn't have a drawbar yet and doesn't have the fenders on, but it looks complete. This, on the other hand, I got some work to do still. And that's it for today's video. My plan has always been to get this so I can drive it out, and I gotta wait for the steering gear to come in order to do that. Drive the tractor out, and then I'll be able to hang and paint sheet metal in here, and that's the real home stretch. But there are so many details. I mean, when you think about undertaking a project like this, it's mind-boggling if you list out all the things that have actually happened with the MD since I started working on it. I don't take these projects lightly, like starting one, because I know once I start, I'm all in, and it is an amazing amount of work. That's why I tend to do these restorations like once every 5 years, 7 years. It's not a steady thing for me. Anyway, I hope you have a great day, and I'll be back with more on the MD next week. I got to do a farm video here because I got some things to do on the farm. I'll take y'all along. I'll see you with that for the next one. Have a great day.